Everybody, welcome to the Women in Trades podcast, the first one in person. This week we have a special guest who some people might find familiar. It's Shelby from Conduit Tech. I met Shelby and Marissa at the national sales meeting in March of last year and thought they'd be great guests. So Shelby is here today to discuss their journey. So welcome. And I guess let's just dive into it. Tell me all about how you guys started Conduit Tech, how you met up.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I'll start with a little bit of background on myself. I started my career working in consulting and then industrial energy efficiency. So literally working in pulp and paper mills. And certainly one thing that I really gravitated towards was working with just smart, curious people, but also really liked that, especially when it came to industrial energy efficiency, getting to work on something that was not only impactful for those businesses, but impactful for the broader energy grid. And so it had more than just one goal. But I was still curious, how could I have a bigger impact that's more directly related to things that I care about on a single everyday basis, not just over a long-term vision? And it got me really excited about residential energy efficiency. And meanwhile, my co-founder Marissa was on a very similar journey. She was working in agricultural technology, thinking about similar questions of how do you drive efficiency, but was like, how can we do this in a way that feels more tangible to ourselves and to the people in our communities? And so we both started exploring how can we help see increased adoption of technologies like variable speed heat pumps or variable speed air conditioning units, insulation upgrades, things like that, that can really have a big impact on home comfort, but also can have a impact on a bottom line of a small business. And as we started exploring that, we realized, okay, well, the answer is pretty obvious. This stuff is actually really hard. From the outside in, it's hard, like it feels so obvious, right? Like for the homeowner, you could potentially save money on your energy bills. You'll definitely be more comfortable because if you design for comfort, you're also designing for efficiency. And for the small business, it's like, of course, like why wouldn't you sell this? And the reality we saw was like this massive breakdown between like what the small business knows or what the company knows that's delivering HVAC services and what the customer knows. And so there was this big gap that we saw. And ultimately, that's where we decided we wanted to build something. And we wanted to help support, particularly contractors in the field, make that connection with their homeowner, help them pick the right solution, not necessarily just the cheapest one, but take advantage of those rebate programs, take advantage of really amazing new systems that can deliver better performance and better comfort. And that's what led us to start building. We built a bunch of different things that are not the product that is Conduit Tech today, that were kind of garbage in some ways, but we had to build them to figure out what was the right thing because we needed the feedback from people who eventually would become our users. So it's been a very fun, almost 4 years now, building together and almost 3 years as a formal company.
Did you have any challenges while you have been growing through these past 4 years?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the first challenge was figuring out what's the right solution to build or what's the right tools to build, because there is a lot of great technology and there's a lot of reasons why some of that great technology might not be adopted. There's a lot of reasons why we understand what are some of the challenges that contractors face that are going to keep them from even being able to take the time to learn something new because they're so busy in the field. I think the biggest challenge was actually trying to figure out what do we build that's actually going to be useful. And we tried a few different things. We tried building predictive maintenance, sensor hardware kit. And we're like, this is not solving an urgent pain of anyone. And people would be like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'd try it. And once we started building out what we have today, which is a design and sales platform, we saw a completely different reaction. People were like, when can I get that? How much do I need to pay? I'm ready to put it down today so I get first access. And once we started seeing that, we shifted away from that initial challenge. But I think that was probably the most challenging, is figuring out what to build. And I think what I expected to be the most challenging was going to be finding people who were interested in buying it. But once we found the right thing to build, people were excited about it, and they were excited to support us way before they could even benefit from the platform. The product that we released, for the first year that we had a prototype of some kind, it was not necessarily what somebody would actually find use out of, but people were really eager and excited to help us in that journey, which was amazing.
Do you think that the role of women in trades is kind of evolving as the world shifts? Are there any changes that you would like to see going forward?
I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't been in this industry as long as probably many of you have. So I think for us, I will say that we've been extremely welcomed into this industry by pretty much exclusively men because there were no women at any of the events we went to. And it's always been pretty incredible because I found that people were really willing and open and eager to take us under their wing and show us, introduce us to people that could be helpful or help us directly. And so I think that has been a huge privilege we've had. And I hope that's something that a lot of other women in the trades have had. But I will say that I think one of the things that I would love to see is just more women, more people of color. Honestly, it's such a great opportunity. And the example that I always give, I've given it many times, but I think it's one of many that happened to us where I was calling somebody in Texas and I was like, hey, do you have like 30 minutes for me to ask you a few questions about what would be helpful for you, for your company in the long term? And he's like, look, lady, like I am 76 years old. I am retiring next year. I'm never going to adopt whatever you're going to try and sell me. And he's like, but I'm happy to take the time to talk to you because this trade has given me so much and I would love to be helpful and help build something better for the next generation. And I always use that example because there's so many people that we've met. Not all of them were 76 and in Texas, but they have all been, so many people have been like, yeah, I'm happy to help you because somebody helped me in this trade, or this trade has given me a lot, whether it be the ability to provide for my family in a really robust way or something else. And I think that's something that when I look at the trades, I look at it as an extremely not only lucrative, but impactful path that is disproportionately taken advantage of by men for a lot of reasons historically. And I think I would love to see more women be able to benefit from that. I always think about in-home sales and I'm like, this is a great career. But it can be daunting. You're walking into a stranger's home. And I think every woman is taught growing up, like, don't walk into a stranger's home. But it is, I think it is still an incredible opportunity. And so I would love to see more women. And I think there's so many great organizations dedicated to that in the trades, including this one and including Women in HVACR. That's trying to help build those connections as well, though I've never found an issue with building the men in this industry too.
I agree. That's been my experience as well. Like people seem to be very easy to connect with and share their knowledge.
We're very glad that you had a positive experience in the HVAC industry. Not to jump off topic a little bit, because I know we have a Women in Trades podcast, but I've recently watched Silicon Valley and noticed that it's like mostly men in that show. So I was curious to see like if you've had the similar experience in the tech industry.
It is very funny because I talk about this, like people always expect that there's like a lot of judgment that comes with whatever industry you're in. People are always like, oh, like it must be really tough being like a woman now working in the trades where it's, like 95% men. I don't know what the exact statistic is, but I feel like it's something around there. And I'm like, you know what? It's much easier, I think, than being in like tech startups because I think the power dynamics are often different. Investors are often men, whereas in the trades, what you have is like people who are starting their business, building them up from scratch, and then like either joining a larger company or something like that. Right. And I think that with the startup world, sometimes there can be like there's different money dynamics at play and things like that. But I would say that, again, it's probably pretty similar. Like I've had overall a great experience, as has my co-founder, Marissa, because we've surrounded ourselves by incredible people. And we get to choose who we work with. And that's true for working in the trades as well, as we choose who we get to work with. Obviously our customers choose us as well. But we'll tell them if we're like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a fit for you. And I think the same is true when it comes to tech startups. You hire good people, you hire people you want to work with, and you work with, in the case, we are venture backed, so we have capital from investors. We work with amazing people who really care about equity and care about building great companies and are focused on providing development opportunities for us as well, knowing that, as women, we might face a different expectation just because of our gender, not for any other reason.
I'm glad you had a similar experience, and it's good to surround yourself with people that want to see your product become successful. So speaking of Conduit Tech, how does your platform differ from traditional HVAC tools?
Absolutely. So we are an on-site design and sales platform that engages customers through LiDAR-enabled home walkthroughs, automated sales presentations, and augmented reality to convert more sales and facilitate like top-notch installs. That is a mouthful. And so very tactically, like what we uncovered is that we saw that sales team members in particular, and that's where we really wanted to build for, because they're the connection with the customer. They're them, the CSRs, they are the ones who are communicating and really building that relationship. And we found that there was this weird dichotomy that if like you wanted to do really high quality, deliver really great work, you were going to spend either more time of your team's back office support or your CSR's team, or just home or at the office after your sale. If you wanted to deliver really amazing work, and your customer was never going to see it and they would never know about it, which feels like a catch-22, right? You have only so much time that the customer, the homeowner, is available. And we wanted to be able to figure out how can you actually use the high quality design work that you're doing as part of that sales process. To engage your customer in a different way so that they can see what you're actually doing for them, because it felt almost unfair, right? Like your customer never gets to appreciate what you're doing for them. And so they're going off of the relationship you built, which is great, but you're also doing so much more. And this is something true with all the CELA companies that we have the privilege of working with, is that your teams were doing all of this work. They were doing rebates, filing permits, like all of this stuff takes a ton of time, costs the business a lot, and generates pretty much nothing from a revenue or sales conversion perspective. But it's an expectation. And so what we looked at was like, how can we make that all part of the sales process and an engagement tool that helps use that craft work and that paperwork, frankly, as part of the sales process. So that's like the core to what we do. And then in terms of the technologies we're using something called LiDAR, which is what we're using to pretty much recreate the homeowner's home in an anonymized fashion. So what LiDAR enables you to do, it's a remote sensing technology that uses lasers to measure distances. And it's in devices as simple as an iPad Pro or an iPhone Pro. So if you have 3 cameras on your back, you have LiDAR on your phone. You've probably never thought about it. I certainly had not, unless you were taking like photos that had some really great depth perception. That's how they're using it. So if you like portrait mode is, I think, leveraging, in some cases, at least in the night mode, is using LiDAR. So what it does is you take that laser, it like just sends a light beam out, and then it like hits an object. That laser pulse that's just in the back of that camera then bounces back. And what the technology is measuring is how long it takes for that pulse to return. And that's the speed, and using like the speed of light as part of that calculation, they're determining how far it is. And that enables us to create a whole 3D model of the home, but with nothing personal in there. So you can't see, the water bottles or like the clutter, whatever it is. And so it makes it personal for that homeowner without making it, super, super detailed. And so what we're able to do is generate a 3D rendering of the entire home, a 2D floor plan of that home with all the dimensions, and something called a load calculation or a system sizing calculation for residential HVAC pros. And that's all done in 10 minutes or less, a process that, when detailed, can take between an hour and 2 hours otherwise. But it is also something that your homeowner's coming along with you. They're part of that design process. They're seeing their home come to life. They're answering questions about their home, and they're seeing why that's going to be the right choice. So they're part of it, and they're building that buy-in. And that's one of the core things that we built out first. Since then, we've continued to leverage other technologies like augmented reality, which enable you to visualize things like, what is this install going to look like on the inside and the outside of my home? Similar to how, like, I've heard Amazon has like an app that you can visualize like one of their couches inside your home. Same thing with your HVAC install. And we've also built out different tools for homeowner education. So whole bunch of different things that we've been working on, but really started with that LiDAR design piece and that customer engagement.
Thank you so much for explaining that too, because in the notes we have, you were like, what does LiDAR mean?
I honestly talk about LiDAR every day, and I still had to look up like light detection and ranging, but like why is there an I there? Like, I don't know. It's just so it sounds normal.
No, absolutely. So it sounds like Conduit Tech is already, with the technology that you guys are using, is already reshaping the future for HVAC and home energy efficiency. This might be a broad question, but do you have any predictions or aspirations for technology and HVAC in the future?
I think my like my biggest goal or my biggest hope is that it makes these roles in these companies more accessible to people who don't have a background in the industry. And I think this has been really cool. As we work with CELA companies, we see folks are coming into the trades who have never been in the trades before. They're coming from AT&T, they're coming from, car sales, wherever they're coming from. But they have all the core skills of what's going to make them a great team member and what's going to make them really talented at communicating with the homeowner. And so our mission is to help lower that barrier to entry, because I think previously most folks had to come from working in these jobs beforehand to be able to have these jobs. And I think that is something that I just really hope that we can support. And I'm really excited about some of the other technologies that our peer companies are developing that support other team members within HVAC companies, because I think there is so much opportunity. There is also a very tight labor shortage. And so finding amazing people, there are so many amazing people out there. They just don't necessarily have background in HVAC. So how can you make it more accessible, but both to become a service technician, an installer, a sales team member, a CSR? What can we do to help and use technology as a tool? I frankly don't see any world where it replaces anyone. I think technology will replace engineers and other people in other industries way before that happens. But I think that it's a tool to augment and to lower that barrier to entry.
So yeah, I love the way that your technology, still going back to the previous question, does make a personalized, kind of customized approach to your customers that really bridges the gap between the salespeople and the homeowners. That's really cool that you facilitate that with technology. What has been your strategy for scaling Conduit Tech since its founding in 2022?
I mean, the number one thing we had to do over 2022 and most of 2023 was build like a product that was robust enough to be functional in the field. Very frankly, because one of the things that there's so many startups out there that build like a rapid prototype, and that rapid prototype is awesome. But what matters most to our folks in the field is this reliable? Like, can they trust us? Can they trust that this is going to work for them the vast majority of the times, and they'll know when it's not going to? And I think that was where we really focused before we started any form of scaling, because we knew that we have to build that trust and we have to maintain that trust over time. And that's always something that's going to be core to what we do, is making sure that we can do that. So I think that was like step one, is make sure the product is robust enough. And my co-founder and I would talk like every week. We'd be like, okay, what are the 5 additional things we need to build out before we feel like we're ready to bring more people onto the platform? And how can we pace this out so that it is appropriate? But the platform has continuously evolved. So it's both not just making sure that we remain reliable and robust, but also making sure that we build more and more functionality that really resonates with the industry. And I think as we've looked at now that we're in this space where we feel like our product is reliable, we have plenty of functionality that we see a lot of excitement for. The biggest piece, I think, has been just cultivating word of mouth. That is the most powerful thing by far, is referrals from our existing customers to new customers. The same for anyone who runs an HVAC business. It means not only do we have happy existing customers, but it also means that we have a group of people who are reaching out to us because they've heard good things. And so I think for us, the first step for scaling 100% was making sure we generate happy customers in the first place. And now from there, just building on that and seeing, okay, when people talk about us, what are they saying about us? How can we amplify their voices? Because nobody really wants to hear from us talking about how great we are. In fact, I especially don't really want to do that myself. So I'd much rather have people do that for me. That's been our entire goal, and something we hope to continue is see a flywheel of folks continuing to spread the word about us, and of course going to conferences and engaging with our customers. But that has been what's been most powerful to scale thus far.
Can you share any key moments or milestones that have defined Conduit Tech's journey so far?
Absolutely. So, I think the first thing was in 2022, we received a few different grants from universities, as well as a foundation. And that actually helped us kick off, frankly, a really long development period, because this is more complex technology we were bringing to market. We developed the technology for about 1.5 years before we really sold anything. And that grant funding enabled us to do that. So we are super privileged. We now have grants from not only a few universities, but as well the state of Massachusetts and through their Clean Energy Center. So we've been very fortunate. And I think those have been key milestones for us just because they enabled us to build without, frankly, a huge privilege, build without having to focus on making a sale of something that wasn't ready yet. Since then, I mean, there's been plenty of milestones. Of course, the two most notable or relevant here is in March of 2024, our product was awarded the Powered by Manual J ACA certification, which is incredibly important for both permitting as well as rebate applications throughout the Northeast, as well as many other states throughout the country. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to partner with Sila in March of 2024 as well. And we had the privilege of working with a number of the teams before then. But that was a really meaningful moment for us because we got to collaborate with such an awesome team and teams where we could hopefully have a really big impact.
Wow. So, and as you grow, because, it's going to keep growing, are you considering expanding into commercial work at all? I know you do mostly residential, if not all, at this point.
Yeah, it is all residential, and we do get some asks for commercial. I think the biggest challenge is we're working with iPads and iPhones, which are powerful technologies. And LiDAR itself is very powerful. Like it's used in like satellite imagery, self-driving cars, things like that. But the sensors that are embedded in the devices that we all have in our pockets are not going to be the ones that are necessarily strong enough to be able to serve commercial buildings. So there's some really cool applications of LiDAR in commercial already. But they're like really fancy, like tens of thousands of dollars pieces of equipment that you have to invest in. And so we've gotten a lot of asks for it. But I think right now, one of the benefits of focusing on residential is we get to focus on a very like clear and typically, very few folks who sell residential or design residential systems are also designing commercial. So we get to focus on building for one group as well.
So I guess going back a little bit, you work with Sila a lot of our partners and everything like that. How did you end up, getting partnered with Sila in the first place?
Yeah, this is another case of word of mouth, honestly. And I'm not sure it's like a chicken or egg question, but the first thing I will say is we actually had the privilege of meeting Jason, the CEO, and Mike, the COO, in like 2023, the beginning of the year. And we got to get to know what were their priorities as they thought about some of the challenges and some of the things that, as they consider new technologies, like what would they want to see or what are the things that matter to them. And this is before we really had a robust product that we were even selling. And for us, it was super informative because we're like, okay, we know what we would need to build to even build a relationship here over the long run. And what's really cool is when we partnered with Sila in the same month that we achieved some of those milestones, which was ACA certification was one of them. And it's very distinctive because it helped outline, okay, here's what we need to build. And frankly, that's true for a lot of our other customers across the country. It wasn't just, Jason and Mike said, which is a perfectly good reason, but it also was a really helpful guide that like, this is something that matters to this industry. So that was like one of our initial engagements. It's before we met any of the teams independently. And somehow we got to meet both Boston Standard and Jackson Comfort completely separately from one another, and had the opportunity to pilot our technology with each of them. And we were super lucky because we get to work with awesome teams there who ran with the technology. We're excited about it. That's how we sort of got our footing into Sila right off the bat. But it was incredible because we sort of knew what mattered to at least some of the things that mattered to the teams because we'd had those early conversations with the leadership that enabled us to be able to continue to iterate and continue to build what mattered for the teams on the ground level as well.
And I know that you have said before that you want to see more women in the industry, and so do we, obviously. So we were wondering, do you have any advice that you can think of that you can give to women looking to break into the trades like HVAC or technology?
I mean, the number one thing is definitely looking for mentorship where you can and building relationships. And it doesn't have to be with women. And in fact, in some ways it's kind of crazy, right? Because sometimes that can put more burden on the women who are already in those industries. But I think that one of the things that I found just incredible is there's a few different organizations that are really dedicated to that, including Women in HVACR, including local trade schools. There's an awesome coalition called the HVAC Chicks Coalition, led by a woman named Jennifer, who's up in Maine. But she runs both Women in HVACR and her coalition run a mentorship program where they match folks together. And I think other organizations at like the distributor and manufacturer level through Hardy also run some mentorship or connection level programs. And I think those are really powerful because you get people who are of all genders, colors, et cetera, but they're volunteering and they want to support other people. And I think that has been the number one thing that Marissa and I have benefited from, is not necessarily through those formal programs, but finding people who were really excited to support that next generation coming in. And with those mentors and advisors, we've been able to grow this because we've had access to resources that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
In our Women in Trades group, we were actually looking into a mentorship program as well. So I think that's great that you said that, and that's a spoiler alert.
It's in the words.
It's in the words.
25.
Yeah. So another question we had was, how can companies in the trades create more inclusive environments for women?
Man, this one's hard for me to answer, and I'm gonna take somewhat of a pass by saying that, like, in our case, Marissa and I are the co-founders here. So this is two women lead this company. Hopefully we continue to create an environment that works well for women. That's something we care a lot about. And I think that comes to, frankly, there's a few things that I think probably stand out, which is, one is, to the extent it's possible, parental leave is probably something that's useful, because I know so many people want to grow their families and have that opportunity, and parental leave on both sides. That means supporting the men doing it as well. I think that's a benefit that makes it that makes it not just about, women taking this time for their families because they physically need to, but also men because they can support their partners or their families in that growth that they're experiencing. And I think that's really hard for every company to offer. We're a small business as well, and so it's a challenge, and it's one that we're executing on, and we're going to do our best to deliver on that, and any benefits that we can offer that are related to that. So this is a very small one, but like dependent care FSAs, you can offer it as a company at a pretty affordable price where people can save and put tax advantage dollars away to be able to care for their children while they're at work and things like that. So I think those are things that I don't think are exclusive to women at all. And I actually think part of creating an inclusive environments is actually creating things that benefit everyone, that should benefit everyone, but are typically viewed as, or historically have been viewed, hopefully they don't continue to be typically viewed that way, but historically viewed as female responsibilities in the home. So that's something that I think would be very powerful. But again, it's really costly for businesses to offer. And so it's a challenging balance, particularly for small businesses.
Is one of your future goals some more sustainability or energy efficiency for homeowners?
It's definitely a long-term goal. And I think part of our principles of just starting this business in general is that we believe in what's good for the homeowner or the consumer. It should be what's good for our energy stability and our grid more broadly. And so I think this is one thing we've really learned from the home performance community in HVAC is you build a great building with a great building envelope that has great ductwork, great insulation, all of the services that are offered, frankly, by an HVAC firm. And you build that great building, you're going to have comfort that follows. Your system size is going to be smaller. It's going to run more efficiently. It's going to be designed more perfectly for that building. The homeowner is going to be happier, more comfortable, probably pay less in energy. And your small business owner, your HVAC company is going to frankly make more money up on that upfront sale, but you're building a better building stock. And often there's incentives that make it cost neutral to the homeowner, especially in states like Massachusetts and New York, or frankly, cheaper. And so I think that's where we see this golden opportunity is how do we bring that all together so that we can achieve both those great outcomes for the homeowner and the business. Because I think that's the only way that this work is going to get done is if both sides see those benefits. And there are a lot, and it should be able to happen, but it's historically been way too costly for both the homeowner and for the business owner to offer that type of service.
Do you have any more immediate goals?
No, it's all about growth, right? And I think the number one piece for us is that everything we've built thus far has really been based off of the feedback that our users and our contractors have given us. it really like people will be like, how did you come up with this? And it's like, well, we came up with like something. And if we showed you what we came up with in October of 2022 or whenever it was, like if we showed you that, it looks nothing like what we have today. In fact, I was looking at a video from, I think it was 7 months ago yesterday. And I was like, this is not what our product looks like at all. And it's because we keep evolving it and improving it to match what the feedback we get is. And so I think our entire like technology future is frankly based off of what our customers tell us they need. And what are the things that are challenging in our product today? How can we make them easier to use? What are the things we don't do today that would be the natural next extension? And so we have, the last thing I'll say on this is like, we track like every piece of feedback we get, and we now have like this spreadsheet, very well organized thanks to our design leader. But it's thousands of lines long of feedback we've received. But when we're ready to okay, we need to improve this module of our platform. All we need to do is search for like ductwork or, report, whatever we're looking for. And we know the insights that have been captured from our customer success team or our sales team, or our product team, whatever it is, and can use that to build what's next. So, but I would say our future goal is continue maintaining a great platform that we have today, making it better, and then expanding the value that we can help contractors deliver to their homeowners on site. And it's fun because we get to work with awesome people. So that's the real reason.
Was there anything else that you'd like to add, or any social medias you wanted to get on air?
If we can be helpful in any way, totally independent of our product, to anyone who's listening in, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We manage, my email is shelby@getconduit.com. It's very simple. Our website is getconduit.com, but always happy to connect with any woman or person who isn't a woman in the trades, be helpful in ways and try and give back some of the love that's been given to us.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was great to see you all, and hope you guys have a wonderful Friday and the rest of your weekend.